Hello, indie authors. Just in case you can see in the video, I do have a little friend with me on my lap today. He was being insistent. This is Radar, if you can see him in the video. And for those of you that are joining me on the podcast, I'm Valerie Ihsan. Thanks for joining the Indie Author Mentor Show. This is episode 4, and today is March 26th, 2019, as I record this a little bit early because I'm on my way to AWP tomorrow, which is normally when I plan the podcast. So today I'm going to be talking about some of those nitty-gritty details, finally, about the publishing process. Let me amend that. It's part of the things that you as an indie author / publisher need to do. It's not necessarily part of the publishing process, but it is on the checklist that you can get on my website for free. It's ValerieIhsanAuthor.com, and Ihsan is IHSAN. Okay, so personal update first. I did already mention I'm going to be on my way to AWP tomorrow, and that's in Portland, Oregon this time. And I'm embarrassed to say that I still haven't been working on my taxes. So next week is going to be really hard, and I'm going to have to shut everything else off and just work on my taxes until they are done, or I'm going to be in a world of trouble. So, what else? I guess, the writing schedule that I said I was going to try. I've done it 2 days now in a row, and so far it's okay. It's kind of clunky, but yeah, I'm not sure. Today was a better day. The first day was kind of weird, and I imagine I'll keep doing this until it's not weird anymore, and then I'll decide if it's working for me, because often I leave something because it feels weird, and it doesn't feel quite right yet. So I think that's because it's new and not because there is a problem inherent in the process that I'm trying. So, and in case you didn't remember or didn't hear the last podcast, the process that I'm trying to work towards doing this go around in my writing schedule is getting up in the morning at 6 or 6:20 is my backup alarm time. And that's when I got out of bed this morning, was the 6:20. And then I take care of some needs, and then I feed the dogs and let them out, and then I make tea, and while I'm waiting for the water to boil, I usually do some dishes or whatever's in the kitchen. And then I make my tea and I go into my office and start writing. And then I did that for about 45 minutes this morning, working on the How Do You Write a Novel book. And then I meditated for 10 minutes. I meditated for 10 minutes, and then I made breakfast and walked the dogs. And then I started working in my office. So that felt pretty good. We'll try it again tomorrow. And then, like I said, I'm not sure how well I'll be able to do writing while I'm at the conference. So we'll see. I'll report back next week on how I did with my writing routine at the conference. Okay, so thank you to new patrons this week. Sandra Kelly Green of Springfield, Oregon. Yay, I'm super excited. Sandra's joined us in the Patreon community. She left a comment too. It says, great podcast, Valerie. I'm in like Flynn. So that was really sweet. Thanks, Sandra. Okay, thank you so much to the support of my patrons on Patreon. It really means a lot that you support the show and my desire to help other indie authors like you. The support of patrons on Patreon helps make this show and other projects possible, plus being a patron of the arts is a really cool thing to do. Joining my Patreon community also gets you sneak peeks into my creative world. allows you to interact with me directly, and rewards you with exclusive bonus content you can't get anywhere else. For less than the cost of a tasty hot beverage or a pack of gum, as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of the arts and me. Find me on patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan. Okay, on the resources, again, I'll mention I've made room in my schedule for new coaching and editing clients, and you can contact me via my website for that, ValerieIhsanAuthor.com, and there is a contact form under the contact tab. Or you can email me directly, Valerie@ValerieIhsanAuthor.com, IHSAN. One more little side note on that, I am starting to fill up for the summer. So if you do want to get in for, it's kind of early for the spring, but I am available most of May, and I'm looking at my calendar, most of April and May, I have room for editing clients, some of June, a smidgen of July, and yeah, so get in. If you'd like me to work on your stuff, I will take a sample, a 5 to 10 page sample of your work, and then I'll show you how I edit, what your document will look like when I return it to you, and give you a project price for the document itself. Depends on how long it is. Okay, let's get on to the main topic, and today we're mostly going to be talking about scheduling. So last week we talked about how to do that first read through and then, putting those changes into Scrivener. Before that happens, we talked about putting it aside for at least 2 weeks, longer if you can stand it. And during that time is when you can be doing the things we talk about today. So you're going to need, especially if this is your very first book, you're going to need other eyes on the manuscript to let you know where the broken bits are. And it's totally okay that your book's broken, because everybody's first book is broken. Everybody's first draft is broken, even if it's your 13th book. So a developmental editor is who would probably be the first eyes on your manuscript. So if you decide to use one, a developmental editor is going to be looking at that macro view of your manuscript. He's not going to be looking at typos or sentence structure. This is going to be, sometimes they're called story editors. So they're going to be looking at the whole story, like a bird's eye view of that inciting incident and the major plot points and the character development, the character arc. Is there places where they lose track of the story? Are there story questions, plot holes that are still there at the end of the novel, etc.? So you need to schedule time for a developmental editor, because they have other clients besides you, and they book up just like any other service provider would. So if you're going to make an appointment for the massage therapist or for the dentist or for the doctor, you have to book ahead often, and you can't get in right away maybe. So the same is true of professional editors. And a developmental editor will take probably a month to read through your book and come up with a report that they can send you. And so if they've got other clients, they're going to have to book out sometimes several months in advance. So as soon as you think that you're going to be able to turn in a manuscript to your developmental editor, then I said that wrong. When you go through that first read through and you mark it all up and you put the changes in Scrivener, now you've got your first revision checklist. We talked about this last week. And it's going to take each individual author a different amount of time to go through that list and make those changes. So you're going to have to estimate yourself. Is it going to take you a month to put those changes in and finish any questions that you've left open-ended in your notes, because you're not going to want to turn in a document to a developmental editor that says, write a scene where Uncle Bob talks to the veterinarian, because I'm holding a dog and that's the first thing I thought of. So you have to have the whole manuscript written from beginning to end. You can't have any holes left in it or questions left. So it has to be completely done from beginning to end. And a person other than you could read through it and understand where the story's going. So however long it's going to take you, maybe it'll take you 4 months to go through those holes and changes that you wanted to make from that first read through. But I would try to get that scheduled appointment with the developmental editor as soon as you know when you can have the manuscript ready. So once you go through and you make all those changes, that becomes your second draft. And that second draft is the one that you're going to be sending to the developmental editor. Okay. In addition to, or instead of, the developmental editor, if you're choosing not to use one, are readers, first readers, alpha readers, whatever you want to call them. These are people, usually unpaid, that are willing to read through your entire manuscript and give you feedback. And they're going to give the same kind of feedback that a developmental editor would. It's that macro story version. Not the typos, not the discrepancies. I mean, if they saw some, you could have them point them out too. But again, major points is what you want. Is the story work? Does it break somewhere? Does it slow down too much somewhere? Is the character do you like the character? So those big, huge story questions. Is it exciting enough? Is the pacing off? Those kinds of things. And so your alpha readers can be a mix of other writers. Maybe you're trading with another writer. I'll read your manuscript if you read mine. Or they can just be readers of that genre. That's really important. So if you are writing a science fiction story and the reader that's volunteered to read your book doesn't read science fiction and they only read romance, then they're not going to understand the tropes and obligatory scenes that are in a science fiction book. And they won't be able to give you the kind of feedback that you need to make your book the best it can be. So find somebody that likes to read in your genre, or other writers who also write in your genre that are going to be willing to do this work for you. And the way that you go about getting first readers, again, is to ask other writers or ask family members or friends that like to read in your genre and ask them, but be really specific about what you want from them. So what I do is I'll give them a document, whether it's in an email form or a Word document that I've typed up ahead of time that just says the title of the book and a small little blurb. I'm going to change my mind about using that word. A small book description, and sometimes I even put the cover of the book in it if I have it already, just to say, hey, this is my book and this is what it's about. If it interests you, this is the job description. I want you to read through this book by this particular date and give me feedback on the bullet points, whatever it is that you're specifically looking for. Like if you know you're rotten with scenes building, you can make sure, tell me when I'm slipping into summary too much and you want something to be in scene, or if you feel like I've left a scene out, or maybe you suck at writing setting. So you can have your alpha readers look for places where having more concrete sensory details to, about the setting, where that would be more useful. Stuff like that. So you can be really specific, or you can just say like, tell me if it lags anywhere, or if it's boring anywhere, or if there's any questions you have at the end of the book that I didn't answer in the story, or whatever. So you can ask them specific things. But the most important part is to tell them what you want to get from them in feedback and when you want it by, so that they have a deadline to get it back to you. Otherwise, they just won't get around to it. And if they can't get it done in the time allotted that you have, because remember, you've already scheduled an appointment with your developmental editor, then they won't take the job of alpha reader. So another suggestion, I don't know if this is a suggestion or not, but this is just something I do. I created a book club of alpha readers for myself and for my community. And I live in Springfield, Oregon. So if you want to be part of this is the Alpha Readers Book Club. And we have a Facebook group page that you can search for and find. So the Alpha Readers Book Club does just that. We just meet monthly, just like a regular book club. And we've got, snacks, and we meet in each other's homes. But what we're reading are each other's manuscripts. And so we sign up for a specific month. We get the manuscript to the other members a month in advance. And we tell them what we're looking for specifically. And we read it, and we meet, and we give feedback just like you would for any other book club. So that works for me really well. And I often use that instead of a developmental editor for some of my books. Some of my books I do choose to use a developmental editor in addition to the alpha readers. So the more eyes on your manuscript, the better, I think. Okay, so you've set a date for the alpha readers or for your developmental editor or both. And then you also, let's see, what's next on my list? Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so at this point, again, I wanted to remind you that these checklist items might not be so linear. Sometimes they bleed over one another, or you're doing things simultaneously, or maybe you're waiting around for a little bit. And so while you're waiting to let the manuscript rest, you can do some of these things. And then once you've printed it all out and you've done all your stuff to the original manuscript and you've made your changes and you've already scheduled your appointments with the developmental editor and the alpha readers, then it's time to send it to them. And so that's going to be with them for a whole month. So now you've got a lot of time on your hands to do some of this back end admin work that publishers/authors need to do. And one of those things is to figure out your cover. So what I do for cover art is, first of all, I hire a cover designer. I don't try to make a cover myself, because I'm not a cover designer. I'm not even a graphic designer. Even if I were a graphic designer, I would hire a cover designer, which is different than a graphic designer. So I'll just say it. My cover designer is paperandsage.com. Her name's Krista Holland, and I've used her for years, and I really like her work. So you can check out her. But if you just Google cover designers, you'll get loads. If you want a little more curated list, you can go to reedsy.com, reedsy.com. They're a curated marketplace for people like cover designers or editors. You can also use a service called 99 Designs, and that's kind of fun because you put out there what you want in a cover, and then people, they don't bid on it per se, but kind of. They'll make a cover. They'll do a cover and they'll submit it, and then you get to choose, and you don't pay for it unless you've chosen a specific cover design. I think that 99 Designs is a little bit more expensive than I like to pay, so I stick with my cover designs. Usually cost me about $160. And that is the ebook cover and also the print cover, because those are different. And I also get the print cover designed for KDP Print and also for Ingram Spark, because they have different dimensions. They have a different template. And so if you try to use an Ingram Spark, true story, if you try to use an Ingram Spark designed cover on a KDP print book, it will not line, the spine and the front cover will not line up correctly, and you'll have a little bit of bleed over from the front cover to the spine, and it just looks kind of dumb. So some of my, one of my books has that challenge. Okay, so picking out cover art. What I do is so Krista, my cover designer, has different tiered prices for her cover designs. And so what I choose is a custom cover tier 1 level, which means I provide the stock art. So I go to istockphoto.com, and I look through and find a big handful of covers that might work, and I stick them all in a file and I send them to her, and she goes through and lets me know, okay, this one will work, this one won't work. If you like this, idea, then this artist has another option that would work better if you wanted to use it, that sort of stuff. So we'll have an email back and forth about what covers, and then I narrow them down to, I ultimately narrow it down to the final one that she says will work for a book cover. And then I purchase it and I send it to her, and I schedule a time with her to work on the book cover. And the way she works, and I don't know if all cover designers do this or not, but my cover designer books ahead a whole week. So she'll say, we'll plan, okay, we're going to do this April 1st through whatever the final day of the week is of that month. And on Monday, she'll send me the first draft of a proof copy. And I can either approve it or say, hey, can you move the title over a little bit to the left, and could you put my name down at the bottom, and stretch it out a little bit so it goes from side to side. So you can give feedback, and she'll have that whole week just dedicated to my book cover. And then we can go back as often as we need to in that week. And then I finally approve the proofs, and she sends them to me. And usually at this stage, well, actually, I think I'm just going to stop there because I'm getting a little ahead of myself. At this stage of the checklist, you're just looking at cover art. You're picking out the cover art, and you're scheduling with the cover designer. That's all you need to know at this point. So sorry for digressing into another little direction there. But right now, you're just picking out cover art, and you are scheduling with the cover designer. And then the other schedules that you need to be thinking about is your line editor, which is different than your developmental editor. Your line editor is the one that's going to be going through line by line, looking for typos, looking for sentence structure, looking for awkward sentences, looking for discrepancies, looking for inconsistencies, and it takes a long time. So you're going to be scheduling with that line editor, but if this is your first or second or even your third book, you might not know how long it's going to take for the developmental edits to come back and for you to make those changes, because often you'll have to be doing some rewriting, because again, this is like macro level that you're looking at right now, and you're trying to fix story problems, which is different than just, switching up some words here and there. So you're going to have to sort of guess on the timeline. And some writers won't make an appointment with a line editor until they're completely done with the rewrites. And then they'll book, even if they have to, wait with nothing to do for a month before the manuscript can go to the line editor. They're okay with that because they don't want to rush the story structure part of revising. So it's up to you, again, as the author, you can choose. But but that is something that you'll need to be mindful of, is you're going to have to schedule for that line editor, just like you scheduled for that developmental editor. Okay, so I'm looking through my list. You've sent your manuscript to the developmental editor. You've sent out requests for, oh, that's one I haven't mentioned. Send out a request for a book blurber, and also for beta readers, which are different than alpha readers. So beta readers are kind of like line editors, but they're, well, they're not schooled in it. They're just readers that read in your genre, that will read your book and mention any typos or questions they have or places they're confused or anything like this. It's just like any other beta testing you would do on any other product. So when a product's ready for the market, it goes, to beta testers, and they'll use the product or watch the movie or read the book or whatever they're beta testing, and then give feedback to the creator and let them know if it works or doesn't work or whatever. Gives them reviews, basically. So you do want to get as many beta readers as possible to look through your book. And it's arguable when to do this. Sometimes I have sent the beta readers the manuscript at the same time as I'm sending it to the line editor. And sometimes I send it to the line editor first and then to the beta readers after I've made the line edit changes. And then the beta readers get it like right before the proofreader. And some of these you can, because we're all working on a budget, right? So some of the editing costs the most out of all of the things that you would do as a self-publisher. Getting your product ready for publication, the most expensive part is going to be the editing, because there are so many stages of edits that you need to do to make it a high quality and professional product, which of course is what you want to do. So if you can't afford developmental editing, you can try those alpha readers. If you can't afford the line editing, well, if you can only afford one set of editors, I would do line editing. You have to. I really believe that that's the number one kind of editing that you should not skimp on and you should have done no matter what. Instead of a proofreader, maybe you could use a beta reader if you want to save money. And you can also use products like Grammarly.com it's kind of a glorified spell check, though. You still have to be mindful of reading out loud and finding words that aren't going to be caught by spell check because they're spelled correctly, but they still don't belong there, or it still sounds awkward or something, or it's grammatically incorrect, or you've used the wrong word, but it's still spelled correctly, so it doesn't catch it. So I think I'm going to call it good. It's been almost 30 minutes. This is a long episode, and I really wanted to be keeping them short for you. So those are a lot of nitty-gritty steps that you can start taking while your manuscript is either resting or while it's at the line editor and you're needing something to do, or at the developmental editor. At this stage, it's just at the developmental editor. And you've scheduled all the other things, and you're looking for cover design art, and you've scheduled with the cover designer. So again, scheduling. That's what this episode is all about, scheduling. So thanks for joining me today. And next week, we will be talking about other, even more nitty-gritty stuff like Library of Congress numbers and ISBNs. So please join me next week on the Indie Author Mentor Show.